If at any point in time you appear not to be hearing me, please feel free to let me know as well. We, by the grace of God, we will be looking at certain aspects of the PIA. Like the PIA is a very elaborate law. We cannot cover everything with the time that we have. You just have to go and do your reading. But we have tried to explain and emphasize that companies that operate in the midstream and downstream aspects are heavily regulated and they need permits or licenses, which I call authorizations to carry out their activities. And we try to look at some of their conditions, general duties, and the entitlements or rights that are conferred to companies that hold these licenses, as the case may be. And I told us that today we are going to look at certain general laws or certain general provisions contained in and the midstream and downstream aspects. That is, we are looking at from parts 3 down to part 6 of chapter 2 of the Act as they relate uh, to these companies generally, and we'll try and see some principles that have been put in place in that regard. Is that okay? Egele, is that okay? Good. Now you can mute again. So I'm recording the class so I can make the recording available on. So we'll start by looking at the issue of access. But by way of introduction, I just want to emphasize that like I said the other day, the oil and gas industry is a heavily regulated industry, and the company that is involved at in this industry is actually doing a public service, more or less. Any company involved in oil and gas industry is largely doing a public service, but it would also be allowed to make some profit on the side. So if you are authorized to sell petroleum and then that authorization allows you to buy that petroleum you buy, you don't have the right to hoard it, nor do you have the right to bury it in your house and say, after all, the petroleum is my own. Now, if I, as an individual, I buy maybe one, two, three, four, five rubber jerry can of petroleum, I think there's a particular limit that is allowable under the law where you can have without necessarily obtaining a license. Then I may be able to have that petroleum and say, this is mine permanently. But once you own petroleum beyond the limit allowed in the law, you must at every point in time either be disposing of it or be making use of it, but you are not allowed to hoard it. In the same vein, we will be looking at various laws or various provisions of the PIA as they relate to, you can write down now, third party access or access generally. Don't say third party, just say access. Under access, you now have number one, third party access, and number two, open access. We will start with that. And then after that, we will now look at, after that, we will look at the legal regime for discrimination, the provisions in the Act for that deal with discrimination or non-discrimination. Then we'll look at competition regulation, and we will end with customer protection. Is that okay? Egele, you can unmute. Let me hear you. Is that okay? Excellent. So we will not have time to look at pricing, the legal regime for pricing, or what we call price regulation. If God helps us, we can look at it next week. God helping us, we will look at it next week. So let's start with access. First of all, access. Like I was trying to say that you have been granted this license by the governmental authority to operate a network or a pipeline, to construct and develop a bulk storage facility, or to have a gas processing plant, as the case may be. In some instances, in limited instances, it could be granted to you to operate on your own account, but for the most part, you are operating these facilities on behalf of the public. So these authorizations are usually given to the company, first of all, to operate them on your own account, and in other instances, on behalf of the public. When I say on behalf of the public, you are now looking at more or less like a public transporter or a public market, as the case may be. If you are granted an authorization to manage a facility or an infrastructure, petroleum industry, midstream or downstream infrastructure, on your own account, the law mandates that even in doing that, you must also provide for third parties to be able to access your facility from time to time. You must be able to provide that even though this facility has been granted to me, uh, on a personal, individual basis, I may still have to comply with what you call third party access obligations. So, first of all, what is third party access? It is defined in the Act as the legal requirement for owners of certain infrastructure and facilities to grant access to those facilities to parties other than themselves or to their own customers for uncommitted capacity, including competitors, in the provision of the relevant services on terms that are stipulated in the Act or on regulations. So basically, what third party access is saying is that even if you have been granted a facility for your own benefit, you may still be required from time to time to make that infrastructure available to other third parties who could be your customers, or in some cases, even your competitors. And it is not your place to say, Oga, you are in competition with me. I will not allow you to have access. Are you with me so far? Victoria, you can unlog and let me hear you. Are you with me so far? Excellent. So if you notice, Google, for example, Google is into a lot of things, like we all know. They have YouTube, they have a chatting app, they have a video app. Now they have come into Meet. So now we're having this our meeting through Google. Is it Meet now? I think Meet is Microsoft. This platform. Okay, this is Meet now, Google Meet, yeah. So can you tell me one competitor of Google Meet? Egele, tell me one company that is in competition with Google Meet. Excellent. Zoom. Another one is Teams. Teams is for Microsoft. So Google now is meant to open access to its platforms, even to Teams and even to Zoom. So if I want to have a Zoom meeting with you guys and I'm doing it, I can do it through the Zoom app, or I can do it through a Zoom browser. I mean, through a browser. If I'm doing it through a browser, it could be Microsoft, it could be Mozilla, and it could be Google. Google now is meant to to allow third party access to me to use Google to use Teams or to use Zoom. Are you with me? And if it tries to say, okay, Oga, you want to have a meeting, you must use Meet. If you don't use Meet, it will not allow you. Then they will have hindered third party access That same concept is brought here where the law is saying that on a general note, third party access is a legal requirement that says you must allow access to your infrastructure by your customers or by your competitors, as the case may be. But of course, you know that companies will not just want to comply, they will want to look for ways to frustrate access. For example, now, I don't know if you have noticed, if you have a Mozilla, if you have a Microsoft computer, which I believe we all have, if you are trying to browse, they will ask you, make Microsoft your uh, your what now? Make Microsoft your default browser. I don't know if anybody has experienced that before. So, what are they trying to do? They are trying to take advantage on your own account. Yes, when we are talking about third party licensing, we are talking about a case where you are granted an authorization to manage these facilities on your own account, but you must, under the law, from time to time, make provision for third party access. Similar to third party access is what they call open access. Vicky, are you with me? Good. So open access is a little bit different from third party access. Open access here is that we are giving you a license or an authorization not to manage it on your own account, but to manage it for the general public. So here, we are not doing